Down at third, Scudero at second, Sandoval at first. The pitch. There's a swing. A long, high fly ball deep to left field. And upper deck. Goodbye. A grand slam for Buster Posey. The Giants have scored 6 in the 5th inning in this elimination game.
How many presidents of baseball operations can say they did that? Not very many. Buster is in. Farhan is out, if you're just joining us. And we had a whole plan of talking 49ers victory Monday and putting Krug in there and talking and analyzing the win over the Patriots, which we'll probably do much more of tomorrow. But Krug, we know that you are much more than just 49ers talk. You do it all. And make sure you check out his YouTube show. Follow Larry on social media. He is awesome. And plus, he does Niners Nightly. But we want to talk some Giants with you because you've been outspoken about the Giants for years. And I know you weren't the biggest Farhan fan. So not only is Farhan out, but Buster is in. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's long overdue. I mean, it had to happen. Is when you go to the grocery store and you walk down the the detergent aisle and you see new and improved Tide. Do you really think it's new and improved, or you think it's the same Tide they've been selling since 1955? It's the same Tide, but you have to put new and improved to make people take another look at it. Well, the Giants needed a rebranding to make free agents and other people look at their organization differently, and the fans are a big part of that. I mean, Farhan is Mensa smart, but guess what? He doesn't know how to do sales. In sales, you have to underpromise and overdeliver, and if you do that, you're a good salesman. And if you do the opposite of that, you're a bad salesman. And that's what he did. He did the opposite of that. He overpromised and underdelivered. He talked a huge game, and then delivered A.J. Pollock last year at the trade deadline. I thought that was a horrible sequence of events that came down last year. And then, of course, they released Pollock and never even got a hit for the Giants. So, big part of being a GM, you got to sell your plan. You got to sell your vision for the future. You got to sell it to free agents. You got to sell it to agents. You got to sell it to players. You got to sell it to your own players. You got to sell it to the media. You got to sell it to the fans. Farhan couldn't verbalize his vision for the future. And he's done some good things in the farm system. I think the farm system will be better for whoever inherits the GM job, if it's going to be Buster only, or if Buster's going to have somebody else beyond Buster. But I think it had to happen. And I like Farhan. I think he's glib. I think he's pleasant. I think he's interesting. But I also don't think he's suited to be the top guy in a big market general manager situation. I think he's a behind-the-scenes guy.
And now they've made a 180-degree flip from the hiring of Farhan Zaidi as the president of baseball ops and taking him away from the Dodgers, a guy who did not have any baseball background, a guy that Billy Beane found at MIT when he came in to interview with David Force, to a guy who's been nothing but baseball, Mr. Baseball, and one of the most popular and winning and impactful players in the history of the franchise. But this is shocking. 3 years ago, Buster retired from the game at age 34, and you wondered why is he retiring prematurely. Now at age 37, he's taking on this role, and it's wildly popular, obviously. But did you see this coming? Did you, as you were watching Buster play, I think we all wondered what he would do when he was done and maybe going into being a manager. I mean, did you ever envision Buster being a general manager, a president of baseball operations? And do you think it's the right role for him, Larry?
I do. I mean, first of all, Buster is just universally respected throughout baseball by players, by agents, by general managers. I mean, he's a great public face. He's honest. He's genuine. He was a genius baseball player. Boch said he was a genius catcher. Boch only caught Buster in October. But these things are also like, you named GMs like Dave Dombrowski. Is he a GM? Well, yeah. No, he's not. Andrew Friedman, is he the GM? Yeah, he is. No, he's not. Like, is Buster going to be the GM? He's going to be the head of baseball operations. Then he'll probably have a GM under him. That would be my guess. Or has it been announced that he's going to do both roles?
Yeah, he'll have to hire a GM if he's president of baseball ops. And right now, Pete Patel is kind of out there, but it sounds like maybe they're not going to bring him back either.
Yeah. Larry Kruger's joining us. The big news of the day is not the 49ers, but it is Buster Posey being named as president of baseball operations for the Giants. I know he's going to win the press conference. There's no question about that. I mean, people are calling in, and every single call is love it, love it, love it, love it, love
Sure.
it. But, it's been proven that just because you are great at a sport does not mean you're great at building a team. LeBron James tries to do it every single year with the Lakers, and it hasn't worked out yet. Chris Mullin, great player, not as much of a GM. And we go down the list. Derek Jeter, I mean, hey, you know the game. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a great president of baseball operations or GM or coach or whatever the case may be. So how do you think Buster, as Pop said, this is a 180 degrees from Farhan, who was a numbers guy to now a guy who played the game. So how do you think he'll do, even though we don't really have anything to go on?
I think he's going to do really, really well. I think he's going to get, proven people around him. The Giants need to hire somebody who's a proven success, and pour huge sums of money into their farm system and start competing like the Padres do for the top international prospects and build an organization that can have sustainable success against the Dodgers. I think Buster's going to help right away as far as free agents and a better, more baseball player friendly face of the franchise. I think he'll be able to attract free agents, but really what needs to be done is the Giants have to start competing in the deepest pools of talent, which is the international pool as far as international players. I mean, San Diego's gotten into that mix, and they don't have any history. They don't have they don't have anywhere near the money or the history or the status that the Giants have. The Giants have got to get into that, into the bidding for the top guys every single year, because that's where the best players in the world are. And then they've got to do a better job in the amateur draft than they've done. And they've got to start, having the cheap, controllable player that is everything in baseball. I mean, if you have cheap, controllable talent, that obviously helps you at the major league level, but it also helps you in trades. So it's like there's only three ways to get better: free agents, trades, and the farm system. And two of them are really tied to having a nice group of young, cheap players that you can either have or trade from to get what you need. And that's where they really need to start. I mean, they have tons of money, but really what they need to do is they need to reestablish the Giant farm system that was in the late 60s. George Foster, Gary Matthews, Gary Maddox, Willie Kirkland, Jim Ray Hart. I mean, they had everybody back then. And then it just has evaporated over the last 30 years. And it's like somehow they've got to get back to being the dominant player development team that they were in the 60s.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Buster's going to surround himself with people that he trusts and that have a baseball mind. And I thought of John Barr right away. And I know John's still involved in the organization, but I don't know if his input is with Farhan there as great as it was before. John Barr's the one who drafted Buster Posey. When you bring him in a role. And then we had a caller, and I was thinking about, on-field staff. Would Ryan Vogelsong come in some role, or Brandon Crawford, or a lot of guys that he played with, trying to get Boch back if he wanted to not manage anymore. But we had a caller, and I hadn't thought about it, mention the name, and I know you're tight with him, and you've been a big advocate of Brian Sabean's finally going into the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame and getting the credit he deserves for those 3 championships. He is working for the New York Yankees right now, and Brian Cashman in a scout advisory role. Do you think Buster reaches out to Sabey Saves to bring him back to the Giants?
Greg, I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you look at the way baseball is run right now, there's multiple tiers of management, and a guy like Sabes has done it. I mean, he's done it at the highest level. He's the guy who drafted, the Jeters and the Mariano Riveras and the Jorge Posadas and the Andy Pettits and built that dynasty, which was incredible. And then, of course, won 3 in 5 years here. So and those were all his draft picks largely. So I mean, he would be a fantastic name. Ned Colletti would be a great name. I mean, I'm even close with Ned as well. Ned's been doing stuff at Pepperdine and working with the Sharks as a scout and kind of on the periphery of baseball really at this point. But in the right role, I know that he has great affinity for the organization. I know the organization has great affinity for him. So either one of those two guys would be terrific sounding boards for Buster, and maybe a great resource. I think that would be like the guy that would be, in addition to Buster in the front office. But then I also think that there could be a meat and potatoes younger guy, a top young executive, somebody like a Stearns or one of these guys that's around the game right now that's really well thought of. Maybe it's a Pete Petula. Maybe Pete stays. But I think somebody to kind of do some of the hands-on stuff could really help Buster as well. But I think it's a great day for the Giants because the Giants fans are everywhere. The popularity of the franchise is immense, and yet you didn't really see it in the attendance because I think there's a lot of people that have been kind of turned off to the myriad of nothing moves, and a lot of the Farhan stuff was just felt like rearranging the deck chairs. Who's going to be the 25th and 26th man on the roster? Who's going to be the 39th and 40th guy on the 40 man? It's like he churned the back of the roster so militantly that I think people just got so tired of hearing all these transactions that amounted to not much.
The ones you mentioned a couple of things. I think two things right off the bat for me is you're right. He's got to put a bunch of people around him. This is deep, and baseball's different than other sports with the minor league system and all the different things that you have to know. But first of all, I think that their chances of signing Blake Snell just got increased because Farhan was not a closer. I think that if a couple of years ago, Buster's the president of baseball operations, Aaron Judge is a Giant. He loved Buster Posey, and I know that Buster was part of that process, but I think he would have put it over the top. And the second thing is, we just heard this, but maybe the best example is George Contos' interview with him. Buster was pissed, and he realizes what the Giants are as an organization. They're one of the Tiffany franchises in all of Major League Baseball, and under Farhan, I just far too many times got the sense that they didn't feel like they belonged on the level with the Giants, with the Yankees or the Dodgers or some of the upper echelon organizations in baseball, and I know Buster Posey believes that.
And there's no reason that a team as iconic and as rich as the Giants should be taking a backseat willingly to anybody. I mean, they own their own ballpark, and they owned it outright since 2007, I believe, is when the mortgage was paid off. That's an incredible financial position to be in. The Giants franchise, I think, even last year produced like $521 million in revenue. I mean, it's a big-time revenue generator, and the fans are, it's an iconic franchise, and it's a regional franchise. KNBR has been a big part of making it a regional franchise. The Giants, they're down, but really what they need is an injection of confidence, a new face, a new direction. They need to feel better about themselves. They need to land a free agent bat of significance this offseason. I don't think there's any way around that. And they've got to come up with a sustainable plan to run on an even playing field with LA. I know LA makes more money, guys, but what's absolutely unforgivable is that the Dodgers spend a higher percentage. They don't just make more revenue. They spend a higher percentage of their revenue on player payroll than the Giants have over the last 4 or 5 years. The Dodgers are spending 50 to 55% of their player payroll, of their revenue base, on player payroll. The Giants are spending closer to 40%. And, it's one thing to not develop or not have the same revenue streams. It's a whole other thing to commit a lower percentage of the revenue than they're committing. The Giants need to spend more money. They need to spend it wisely. And more than anything, they need to have a better image around the game. Because right now, they're not thought of as like, hey, man, we're dying to get there. And that's a dramatic departure from the previous 20 years. There were a lot of people looking to be here. And I get the feeling that has not been the case the last few years, and that's got to change.
It's interesting, and with the baseball season ending officially yesterday, the Giants, for the first time ever, I guess the way to look at it, today, when they make this huge announcement of Buster Posey taking over as president of operations, they are the only team in this market. For the first time since the late 60s, the A's are not here. And I do wonder, and a lot of it's been the popularity of the Warriors and Steph Curry, and they're having their media day today, but, Steph's getting older. He's not going to play forever. As you look at the business model, and I know being around the Niners so much, you've seen their business model change, Larry, with the Raiders leaving and going to Las Vegas. How do you think the Giants' business model, their revenue stream, will change? Maybe not overnight, but in a year, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. that they're the only team in the market now.
I mean, it definitely can't hurt you, right? I mean, I think it's potentially a very, very positive position to be in. I mean, the things that the Giants have are rock solid, and I've heard people this summer argue that, they're not a coveted spot, and it's like, no, you're so wrong. They're an iconic, great franchise that's down right now. Okay, that's it. They've got a ballpark that's built that's as good as any ballpark there is and is going to be standing for decades to come. They just won 3 titles. They've got, a great history that goes back to over a couple centuries now. I mean, they are one of the haves. They're one of the rich teams in baseball. They mint money. Now that's going to backslide if they continue to struggle, but that's a big part of why this move was made. And I just think that their fan base is maybe their attendance can go so much higher than where it is right now, because there's so many people that monitor Giants baseball but haven't gone because they either didn't like Farhan, didn't like the direction of the franchise, didn't like going and parking in downtown San Francisco, didn't like stepping over, people on the street, didn't like getting their windows bashed in. And if the Giants put out a more compelling product, I think there's going to be lots of people that are going to come to the Yard that haven't come to the Yard during this regime. So I think this is a great move. I don't think Farhan was all bad. I think he made some good moves. I mean, I know the high-profile ones are Yaz and Wade, but he's made some decent, minor league deals. This kid Sabin Sabalos, I think, has got some talent. Bresnahan and Furman, the guys they got for Cobb, those guys aren't bad. Jonah Cox for Stripling. He's made some decent moves that are still kind of percolating through the system, but they needed a new public face to embark on free agency, because the free agent market has to be something that the Giants participate in, or the rebuild's going to take forever.
Talking about Buster Posey named the president of baseball operations. Farhan Zaidi is out. Larry Krueger is joining us again. We'll get more into the Niners tomorrow, but this is the big breaking news of the day. But all right, we got to get one in for you, and Niners Nightly and everything. Just give us your thoughts yesterday. Give us a quick synopsis of maybe the biggest thing that came out of yesterday's game.
Well, I thought the biggest momentum shift in the game was the third quarter when Garendo runs into Saubert and fumbles, and a couple plays later, the Patriots wind up scoring. And then Brock gets the ball back, and immediately 55-yard bomb. He gets Debo, who ran right by Jonathan Jones. And I thought that was the momentum shifter. And then it just seemed like the rest of the quarter, guys, that Brock was going up top. He went up top to Conley. It was incomplete, but went up top to Jennings, threw a perfect dime on that near 50-yard play where Jennings beat Jones. It was really excellent coverage by Jones, but it was a dime by Purdy. I thought those, the Niners actually went up top, so I was impressed by that. I also love the fact that they listened to my advice and took Yadam off the field for Renardo Green. I think you saw the upgrade. Renardo Green's quite a bit better. He can mirror receivers much better than Isaac Yadam. I think the next move is probably to sit down Campbell for Winters. I loved what I saw from Winters in this game. I love what I saw from Leonard Floyd in this game. It was Leonard Floyd's pressure that led to the pick 6 from Fred Warner. And Sam Aquinu, who I talked to this week, I think is going to be a player going forward. So I really loved what I saw from Sammy. Dom Pooney had a phenomenal block on one of the touchdown runs that Mason had. And then I was just so impressed by that sequence where Purdy threw like 3 touchdowns and 2 of them were called back, and eventually he hit Kittle. I mean, Purdy was really playing well at that point in the game. So overall, good win. I mean, any kind of a win. The Niners just needed to get a win. It didn't matter how it came, but it was good that it was an impressive one-sided win. I feel like they're back on the beam and now on to Arizona, and it's going to be a real challenge because they got beat up pretty good by Washington.
Crew, great stuff, man. Appreciate the insight. Thank you. And we'll listen up for and watch Niners Nightly plus the Krug Show. Make sure that you check everything out. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Sounds good.
All right,
thanks, guys.
There's the great Larry Krueger. And again, watch his YouTube show, which is absolutely blowing up, the Krug Show. And make sure that you're watching and listening to Niners Nightly now that the Giants are over. You'll hear it right here on the Sports Leader. All right.